There are a few little sayings that have worked their way into regular conversation when we're talking amongst fellow runners. Um, One of them, I guess it's a feature of getting older, you get into these little catchy little anecdote sort of sayings. Um, one of them, which we've done on the podcast quite often, is sometimes you get success in your running and sometimes you get learning. There's always something that you can take away from a race experience, even if it's not as successful as you were hoping, and from the training, of course. The other saying is that I've sort of been using more and more. I think the really difficult runs are usually where you get the best stories. The example I often give is running Boston in 2018. If anybody is familiar with 2018 Boston, that was the year of the monsoon, biblical rains, and fantastic tales.
Mm.
My tale from that is I beat all the Ethiopians and all the Kenyans that day because they all dropped out. Um, many winter runs with our club in Montreal also fall into that type of difficult run category because if you've experienced a Montreal winter, it is also a biblical experience. Today's book certainly features a difficult run that generated a good story, and maybe we'll find out whether Matt got some success and or some learning out of it. Hi, and welcome to Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you'd like to read the book for yourself. We hope that listening to us chat about running can help you keep you motivated about your own running and maybe inspire you to try something new or different. My name's Alan. With my co-host Liz, we're going to talk today with author Matt Fitzgerald, who has frequent flyer membership with our podcast, about his brand new book, Dying to Run, subtitle, An Athlete's Quest for One More Finish.
So a little bit about the book. When Matt Fitzgerald is struck by long COVID, running becomes a distant memory as he struggles with a failing body that won't recover or cooperate. Doctors have no answers, and every day feels like an endless loop of misery and mental fog. Despite all the risks, he makes the reckless decision to run a 100-kilometer ultra in a record-breaking desert heat wave. Drawing inspiration from modern psychology and ancient philosophy, Fitzgerald embarks on a journey to discover what it truly means to live when your body betrays you. A little bit about Matt, although he doesn't really need any introduction, I don't think, but Matt Fitzgerald is an acclaimed endurance sports journalist, certified sports nutritionist, and the best-selling author of nearly 40 books on running now, nutrition, and mental toughness. Books that we ourselves have covered in previous episodes include Running the Dream, 80/20 Coaching, The Comeback Quotient, How to Run Your Perfect Race, and Run Like a Pro Even If You're Slow. He's also the co-founder of 80/20 Endurance and head coach of Dream Run Camp in Flagstaff, Arizona. Matt is married to Nataki, and they have a dog named Clementine, which is the cutest name ever. So welcome to the podcast again, Matt.
It's great to be back. Thank you.
All right. As we usually ask at the beginning of every podcast, why did you write this book? Especially this one is, I thought that, Running the Dream was kind of a personal account of, your own, story and experience with running. Yet I thought it was quite personal, but this one is even more so.
Yes. Yeah. Life and
I,
death and everything in between.
I guess if the one where you ran with Northern Arizona Elite was called Running the Dream, maybe you should have called this Running the Nightmare.
Yes.
Maybe Matt wanted to, but then,
The
one of his
publisher wouldn't
colleagues
allow
was
you.
like, we're not going to sell very many of those.
Yes. Well, why did I write the book? I mean, there's kind of like two separate questions in there. One is like, why did I decide to attempt to run 100 kilometers with unresolved long COVID? Um, that was about me needing closure as an athlete. I was 49 years old when I developed long COVID. I got COVID running a marathon, so I was still, a very passionate runner and training hard and racing well and really had no desire to slow down. And then I get sick and I have to not only slow down, but stop. And of course, through the whole ordeal, I dreamed of, getting my health back. And if that happened, the first thing I would do with my health is get back in shape and finish unfinished business. It so happened that right before I got sick, I attempted a 100-kilometer ultramarathon, which would have been my longest run ever, and I DNF'd just for normal reasons. I wasn't sick yet. And then, the memory of that failure really haunted me when it looked increasingly like I would never be able to race again. I hated not knowing that my last race was my last race, and I hated like having that DNF, as like the final period on my
Yeah.
journey as an athlete. So I think when I got 3 years into the illness, I think that's when it really started to sink into my bones that I probably would never recover, that I was going to be a lifer with this disease. And weirdly, it's just like it's the way some of us athletes are wired. Like that's when I decided to just because I had it in my head, well, of course I can't race again if I'm this sick. But then I realized there's no law that says I can't do that. It might be kind of reckless, to do that, but I could
Mm.
still try. So that's what led
Mhm.
into the decision to run the race. And I will say, I've been a writer longer than I've been a runner. So I'm, to the extent that I'm wired for for running, I'm even more wired for writing. So I seriously doubt I would have gone through with that quest if not to also write about the experience. So I did want it to be not just a race, but a story. I wanted sort of like I wanted to model a certain approach to being dealt a bad hand of cards with your health and life. I wanted to sort of like make a decision that not many people would make in my position, and then sell it.
Mhm.
To live this
Yeah.
experience and have people read about it and find something attractive in it that makes them, reconsider their own priorities and their own risk tolerance. Maybe not like to decide to live the way I have chosen to, but at least to like think about this stuff. So, yeah, two things wrapped in the. I did it as an athlete and as a writer.
I guess before we get too far along, just to get our listeners all up to the same speed, um, maybe we should talk a little bit about what is long COVID. How I think everybody knows what COVID is these days because they've lived through it. Um, and you get these terrible symptoms of various degrees and various severities, and then hopefully if you're healthy you recover, and after 2 weeks you feel a bit weak and you move on. And you conclude that it's, yeah, I've had, everybody's kind of says, oh yeah, I had that, and that's kind of it. But long COVID is a totally different ball game, and it seems it's difficult to diagnose as well. So what is it that you got, and how did you conclude that that's what you have? Do you take caffeine when you run? Lots of people do because it's in gels and stuff. And caffeine's legal and it's been proven to work. There's actual science that shows that it improves your endurance running performance.
And there's anecdotal data from when you have your coffee in the morning and you go for a workout versus when you forgot to have your coffee or you didn't have time and you went for a workout and it was terrible.
And the trouble with coffee is there's a lot of liquid just to get your caffeine dose.
Yeah, so then you have to stop for the bathroom mid-workout. Very impractical. Which is where Caffeine Bullet comes in.
What's caffeine bullet, Liz?
It's a caffeine supplement. It's wrapped up like in a candy. So, and it tastes like candy. And you can get 100 milligrams or 85 milligrams, which is about a cup of coffee, but without the liquid.
So we've tried the mint flavor and the chocolate orange flavor. They're both pretty yummy.
If you want to try them for yourself, we do have a 20% off discount code. So go to the link in the show notes and you can check out what Caffeine Bullet is and get your 20% discount.
Pretty generous.
It is pretty generous.
And we'll get a small benefit, so you're helping out the
Speaking of which, back to the podcast.
Yeah, so long COVID, belongs to a broad category of post-viral chronic illness. I didn't know any of this stuff before
yeah.
I got sick, but most autoimmune diseases, for example, are post-viral. So you get a cold or a flu or something else, you recover from the acute infection, but then it's almost like your body overreacts to that threat, and kind of mutinies. And so really, like, long COVID is more specifically a category of like chronic fatigue syndrome, or what's known as myalgic myoencephalitis. But post-viral chronic illness with its polysystemic, so it affects really every system in your body. There are more than 200 documented symptoms of long COVID. Not everyone gets all of them. I stopped counting at 35 symptoms.
Oh
For
wow.
me,
Okay.
yeah, it's a
That's
lot.
still a lot.
It is a lot.
Mm.
And then there are some core ones. It's pretty high on the list of diseases you don't want to get if you're a runner, because three of the
Hmm.
core symptoms are chronic fatigue, which makes you not feel like running,
Mm.
exercise intolerance, which makes you feel like garbage if you do run, and
Mm.
then the worst of them all, post-exertional malaise, which makes you really wish you hadn't run. So a lot of barriers. It's almost as if uh, this illness turns exercise into a toxin. It's actually in a very real sense poisonous to
Hmm.
exercise if you
That
have long
sounds
COVID.
like the Lone Star tick when they bite you and you become allergic to red meat if you're like a steak lover. It's like the
Yeah,
same thing. It's like the
pretty much.
steak lover, the thing he loves the most, he
Yeah.
now can't eat, and
It's
it's
poison
like
to
Why
him.
me?
Yeah.
for you, yeah, yeah.
I guess the when I was reading the book, the thing that shocked me when I was reading about the symptoms was this post-exertional malaise, because I hear the word malaise and I think, oh, it's kind of a gentle, like you don't really feel too great. You feel a little bit off. And then I read your description of it,
Hmm.
which sounded like something, I don't know,
Like pretty
the, Na-
horrible.
the Nazi concentration camps would experiment with or something. Um, I think you give it a scale. You give
Yeah.
the PEM, as you call it,
Mhm.
post-exertional malaise, a scale, but it went from 1 to 5. But when I got to 3, I thought, well, that's kind of the limit. How's he going to get a 4 and a 5? um, yeah, I mean, it sounds almost unbearable. I mean, I don't know how you would deal
Yeah,
with that.
and the other facet was that it seemed like it was unpredictable. It didn't seem like you could say that you were going to have it or not after a run, and it didn't happen right away. So maybe you could talk about that part of it, because then how do you associate it with the run itself, or another trigger if it happens not, on the same day or right after?
Yeah. Yeah. So it is a weird symptom. The physiologist, like, there's all kinds of like choke points in your physiology that make exercise, just like it's almost as if, like, if you have long COVID, if you run a mile, your body thinks you ran a marathon. And it's almost like this hypersensitive, overreactive threat response from your autonomic nervous system. But there's a lot going on. Like, there's like microclotting in your blood, which makes it harder to get oxygen to your muscle cells. There's mitochondrial dysfunction within the muscle cells. So it feels like you're breathing through a straw when you're doing like any getting your heart rate up at all. And it really is because your muscles cannot get you actually are kind of suffocating quietly a little bit. Um, and then that gets your nervous system to just try to stop you from doing that, essentially. It's like this is dangerous and I'm just going to make you feel terrible for a long time so that you don't
Mm,
attempt this again. But you're right, it is. I mean, there were times where it was predictable in the sense that I always had it. So,
Okay.
like
Oh,
running was out
wow.
of the question. It was only when I started to improve, actually, that it became a little bit more unpredictable. Like I could actually sometimes get away with a run. And yeah, it's post-exertional, so there is like a delayed effect. I learned when I started training for this race that I couldn't really judge whether I had gotten away with like an exercise stimulus for like 72 hours. So like I would have to wait and just like
That's
run
quite
out
a long
the clock.
time.
Yeah.
it's like
And
Russian roulette. You're sort of
yes.
spinning the barrel.
Yeah, it does make it. I mean, weirdly, because I was trying to make lemonade out of lemons here. So, part of what, made this challenge attractive to me was that I'm so experienced. I started running when I was 11 years old, competitively. And, I was 53 or 52 when I started my comeback. And, I've written all these books and I've been a coach forever. So I thought it was almost like an intellectual challenge. My sense was that accomplishing my goal was close to impossible. And I wanted to see if I could pull off something that was close to
Yeah,
impossible. And that required that I, tried to make something that was inherently unpredictable a little bit
yeah.
more predictable for me so I could control it, so I could get fitter, so I could not die out in the desert there.
I
Hmm.
I never do this, but just to get our listeners into perspective of what the sort of things that you're facing, I'm just going to read your definition in the book of your scale of post-exertional malaise, just so that
Yeah.
people get a flavor for what hell that you have to go through sometimes. I'll start at level two because says level two is like a tequila hangover, basically, which is
I've never
something that
had one of
I
those,
never
but it
go
sounds
anywhere near
terrible.
anymore. Level three is like chemotherapy. Level four
Oh,
is like the day after a major automobile accident. And now you still have level five to get to, which I suppose you're just incoherent and curled up and just want to die.
Yes.
And you're programming yourself for maybe one of those every time you exercise. So I'm just trying to get our listeners in perspective in case they think, oh, well, he's got a little bit of a sniffle. He's having to try to run with it. It's very much not that.
Very much not. Yes.
Just skipping along, it occurred to me when I was reading the book that we did a podcast with your father,
Hmm.
Tom Fitzgerald, about his book, The Road to Redemption, where the main character in it has he has a different condition. He has ALS, and he tries to run the Boston Marathon, which is basically impossible for him to do. But he basically decides he's going to do it. Now, your
Hmm.
father wrote this to begin with. He's drafted it first, like back in the 80s, before
Hmm.
COVID, before COVID was even a twinkle in all our eyes. Um,
hmm.
but has is that just a pure coincidence? Is there a line of connection? Is there, I don't know, some inspiration that you took from that and said, well, I've got a condition and I'm going to do my version of the Boston Marathon? Or is that just pure coincidence? Because there's a lot of parallel.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I ask myself that very question in the book, and the parallels are so stark. Um, you have to think there's got to be something there. So, my dad started writing Road to Redemption right around the time I started running. And I read an early draft of it. So I knew that story about someone who's in the prime of life who gets a devastating medical diagnosis and decides to sort of like go out on his terms and, give a middle finger to the disease by attempting to run a distance he had never run before, with the disease. So I had carried that story inside me for 40 years. And then, in real life, I get to a point where I decide to do something that's almost exactly the same, responding to a life-changing medical diagnosis by attempting a nearly impossible or possibly impossible athletic challenge. So there you have it. I don't really know because there's no counterfactual scenario where
Mm,
I can know if it was causal or coincidental. But the parallels are obvious. And, I will say, my dad's a storyteller. I'm also a storyteller. I make sense of my life through storifying. So I have to think at the very least there was like some influence in my decision. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that often we're inspired by stories, and sometimes we don't even make the connection. Um, but I guess you did in this case. I So I understand why you chose the 100K, because it was this distance that you had unfinished business with, and it's the furthest that you've ever run, and I could kind of understand that. But why didn't you maybe do something in the lead up, like for example, start with a 10K race or half marathon or something, how did you why did you decide to
yeah,
just like
yeah.
jump in and go for the
Did
100K?
did you
Just
did you do that and not tell us about it in the story, or did you fear that doing those kind of things might put you off?
or were you like some of our running buddies and you were drinking with friends one night and the sign up just happened?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my feeling was I expected to fail, honestly. And I told my friends and family I give myself a 10% chance of making it to the start line of this
Hmm.
race. So I felt like, doing stepping stones wouldn't really make any difference for me. I thought I'm sick. I'm not getting better. I just need closure. So I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of like the way a healthy athlete would. Oh, I need to
Hmm.
build up to it. For me,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
like it's close to impossible anyway. So I'm just going to put all my eggs in that one basket. I did run a marathon 3 weeks before the Javelina 100, just as sort of like a feasibility study. I figured if
Okay.
I can't run a marathon, I have no business running 100K. Of course, I chose one of the hardest marathons on earth, the Flagstaff Marathon. It's all on highly technical trails. It starts at 8,000 feet and
Ah,
goes up. It
Ouch.
was a hot
great.
day.
That's
Um,
significant.
yeah. And so I'm not sure what the lesson was. Like I barely survived that race and then decided to go more than double the distance 3 weeks later.
Yeah, I guess the finish line was like success. So you went for it.
Yes.
The other thing that you did during, well, after your diagnosis was you opened Dream Run Camp.
Yeah.
So what, what was I guess let's talk about your wife because she seems to be, kind of this forever supporter.
Mhm.
I think it like everybody needs one of those in life. Like for me, it's my
Mhm.
husband. He's like he just, supports me in any kind of strange ideas that I might have. Um, like changing careers at 45, he's kind of like, yeah, you should go for it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. But so the thing is that oftentimes, our partners, they end up a bit bearing the brunt of the decisions we make because for Nataki, it means that you guys open Dream Run Camp. It means like she's going to be working at Dream Run Camp.
Mhm.
So how did that how did that idea come about while you were feeling your worst? And also, what was her reaction and like how did she take that
Yeah.
idea?
Yeah, for me, my life was pretty close to perfect when I got sick. And it was, honestly, I think good luck, good fortune has a lot to do with that. But also a lot of it was the result of good decisions of, I'm someone who has like very strong passions. I know what I love to do. And I just shaped my life around my passions. And, by the time I was in my late 40s, I was there.
Yeah.
I had my dream life, and then I just got blindsided and really lost almost all of it. Parts of my life that were perfect included my relationship with my wife, and that didn't go away. Um, like I had financial stability, and that didn't go away. But I lost the ability to exercise, not just run, but to move. I lost the ability to use my body for anything. And for a while there, I lost the ability to work. I my neurological and cognitive symptoms got so severe that I had to basically retire from work at 49,
Wow.
49, 50. And so, and but it and I'm someone who sort of like I feel entitled to happiness, and I know what makes me happy, and then like I said, I got blindsided. And also, like, not only can I not do anything, but I feel terrible all the time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm just like moping around the house. As I describe it in the book, like I would lie in bed in the morning until I was sure I couldn't make myself fall asleep again because I had nothing to look forward to. Just like consciousness was a curse for me.
Yeah.
And so from the moment I got out of bed, I just couldn't wait until I was sleepy again, so I could just be unconscious again. So like my days were just open-ended. It was like being in solitary confinement or something, just like 16 hours of empty suffering. And I was deeply unhappy after, having been as happy as I'd ever been, just months before. And my wife has to bear witness to this. She doesn't work, so we're just trapped in the home together, and she's just watching me suffer. And
Yeah.
and and I just thought about like, well, what can I do? You know, of course, I wanted to get healthy, but time was passing and I wasn't getting better. So my thinking was like, what can I do, like being this sick, that will restore some of my happiness? And the idea I came up with was Dream Run Camp. So selling our house in California, picking up stakes, moving to Flagstaff, and opening up a new home, tricked out with lots of runner amenities, and just inviting runners from all over the world into our home to train in Flagstaff, to get coaching from me, and just to like, to pivot into service, face-to-face service of fellow athletes. And Natalki, of course, like this wasn't her dream, but I couldn't do it without her say so.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, she's supportive enough, and also she saw how desperate I was. And I think, I think if I had said I want to live underground, I think that'll make me happy, she probably would have
Hmm.
gone
Yeah.
along with it.
So effectively, Dream Run Camp was at least partly, if not wholly, a response to your inability to run yourself
Yeah,
and to
I don't think I
work
don't think
as
I
a
would have
coach.
gotten the idea if I hadn't been sick. Yes.
Okay,
Oh, so in a way we could say thank you long
there's an
COVID
upside.
because
Yes.
because I mean it's really a genius idea. Yeah, I mean my husband and I we still want to go, just haven't yeah, I haven't
Life.
yeah, life is complicated these days.
Career moves.
Yeah.
With respect to the so you're sick, you're miserable, you've got no prospects. Sorry, I'm laughing as I say this because it just seems it seems so mean. Um, you've got no prospects, and then you decide you're going to run 100K, and you enter the Javelina 100, which is hot deserty type of run. Did the act of just entering have a sort of a positive effect on you? I I know, just us pure mortals, you enter a marathon and you go, "Oh,
You
that's
get all
exciting! I
excited.
got something
Yeah.
to look for. Oh, I got to get on with my training now." And
Well, we need
it's
to
it,
find a plan.
there's kind of an adrenaline or a cortis I don't know an endorphin shot that comes just from pressing the register button. Did,
Mhm.
did you feel something just by entering without having done any exercise?
Yes, and that was almost the whole point. I mean, aside from because again, yeah, I wanted closure, but I didn't expect to succeed. I did not expect to finish the race. I was just going to try. And so, in the book, I talk about, I mentioned I was a very happy person before I got sick. One thing I learned about myself is what makes me happy is being in a state of anticipation. Um, so like feeling like I'm working towards something is
Hmm.
so, pleasure is now, but anticipation is sort of like draws out the pleasure a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's why, being an endurance athlete really worked for me because, I always had some big date with destiny on the calendar. It's like a marathon PB attempt or, trying to qualify for the Ironman World Championship, whatever it was.
Or
Even if
releasing another book.
even if the race was months away, like I felt like every day mattered and
Hmm.
I was working toward it. And I missed that feeling because, again, anticipation is just my sweet spot. It's my happy place. And I didn't have that. So yeah, that was the only part of it that was guaranteed. I knew that if I took this step, I would be back in that anticipatory mindset. And so, as I put it in the book, when I woke up on New Year's Day and realized what I had done, in a way, I felt like I had won already. Like I have still had the same sick, uncomfortable body that I had gone to bed with the night before, but I did feel different. And yeah, so I felt like regardless of how it
Yeah.
ends,
Almost like you'd taken back control.
exactly.
You'd made a
Yeah,
move. Yeah.
yeah.
But
Um,
in a way, it seems like the running got better. I mean, or at least more consistent, or maybe you tried more consistently. Do you think because it sounds like your body was still the same? So was it maybe the power of this anticipation and the excitement from it that just made you more willing to get out there even when you felt kind of crummy?
Yeah, that's the last thing I expected was really what happened. Because in the 3 years, 3+ years that I hadn't run, I had actually tried like th 3 times to, I would go maybe like I would have like maybe 2 or 3 weeks when I was symptom free. And I did have those like good patches. And being who I was, I'm like, well, this is a green light
It's
to
a sign.
mm,
yeah, and I didn't do anything crazy. I would do something very gentle, but it would destroy me. So I had like three of these experiences where, it's like touching the electric fence. Like, well, maybe I won't do that a second time. For me, I'm a slow learner. It took like 3 times. So, when I started like, quote unquote training for javelina, that's what I thought I was going to get. And I was even more cautious. Like I did nothing but walking for like the first 6 weeks, just like more and more walking before I even considered like a tiny little bit of jogging. But so I expected nothing to go my way. I expected everything to be hard. Um, I expected setback after setback, and that's actually not what I got for the whole first phase of the journey. So I was able to, I would certainly pay a price and have, higher PEM levels certain days, but overall, I was able, I think, you know, by by May or late April or May, I was able to like do like a 1 hour run, like with no walk breaks. And I thought that would never happen again. And then the bottom dropped out in June. I went over the cliff, and it was terrible. But then I came back out of that and sort of got back on track. So So like what changed? Like what was different? Like so my
Mm-hmm.
body was, especially like the last 7 weeks before the race, I was taking more risks at that point because I had lost 7 weeks. I lost everything. I went back to zero and then
Mm,
I come out of it and I've got 60 days. And at that point I'm like, screw it. I'm just gonna like start taking risks. And my body was letting me do it. It was still hard, but it was still like way better than my pessimistic expectations. So what was different? It's hard to say. I will say this. Well, two things. I call it the high bar effect. When you're trying just to survive, you do just enough to survive. When you try to go way beyond survival, so you sort of like jeopardize survival in a bid to thrive, you try a lot harder. And I think that's part of it for me. Like there were certain levers I knew I could pull, things I could try, like intermittent fasting was one of them. Before I signed up for the ultra, I'm like, why bother? I'm getting by. I don't like skipping meals. So I didn't bother to
Yeah.
just try that. And
mhm.
so that was part of it. I'm like, well, I'm not just trying to survive here. I'm trying to like be an athlete again. I need to try everything. And some of those things helped. That was part of it. The other part I think is just that, we know that the mind affects physical health. And I think they're just, my friend, when my best friend who I ran in high school with, he showed up to pace me for the race. And he said, dude, you got here by sheer force of will. He knows me very well, and like that was his take. And I sat with that idea and I thought, there's something to that. I just sort of like willed it to happen. No, I don't want other people with chronic illness to hear this and think that I'm saying, what's your excuse? Why don't you just
Yeah.
will?
Mm,
It's not that easy. But I do think that like the analogy I use in the book is like years before I worked in an office where everyone got sick. Like there was like a terrible, gut flu going around
yeah,
and everyone got sick. And I had a marathon coming up and I'm trapped in this cubicle war and with like 30 other, they're all sick. And I remember thinking, I will not get sick. I cannot afford to, and I won't. And sure
yeah.
enough, I was the only person in the entire office who did not catch that flu, and I was around them just as much as they were. So there's something to that. It's not science, but those are my speculations.
Yeah.
A couple of things that you're triggering that they're just listening to you there. Um, in terms of force of will, um, we see through the book. In fact, you're not this. Okay, I'm just going to push through. You're sort of you get through with a sort of I don't know how to describe it. Um, Sort of tangential type approach, which is I'm not going to engage with this because I'm going to lose. So I'm going to. I think you talk about the Stoics in
Hmm.
Greek mythology and Stoic approach, and I think probably that's what I'm getting at in that you don't go like butting heads with trying by sheer force of will to push through a malaise, but you go, okay, I'm not entering into that. I'm not going to allow that to enter into my consciousness or make the physiological event that I'm experiencing control me, make me into a puppet. I think that's the Marcus Aurelius saying that's in there. Don't
Hmm.
let these things. Don't be a puppet to your feelings or your sentiment. So, have you sort of become sort of philosophical, or more philosophical, and sort of mentally stronger during this process? Because it's kind of it encouraged you by giving you some rewards or forced you to go that way.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a kind of pragmatism, honestly.
Yeah,
And it really is. It's just like a special application of the same psychology every runner needs to succeed. I mean, like, you have to be tough, right? But that's the part everyone knows.
yeah,
And it's hyped up and it's sexy. But you really have to be smart and wise in equal measure. You have to be as wise as you are tough to really because you're problem solving. and you're dealing with a reality that you can't entirely manipulate. Like, you know, you know, icing on the cake when race day came. So the Javelina 100, for those who don't know, takes place in the Sonoran Desert, close to Phoenix, a hot place. And then we had record-breaking heat, like a new record high temperature of 99 degrees Fahrenheit. Like, so I didn't control that either. And so that's just kind of like a metaphor for all the things that are outside our control. And wise athletes, it can be easier said than done, but like, it's like the serenity prayer, right? You can learn to separate the things you can control from the things you can't. And simply the pragmatic thing to do with things you can't control is let them go. You just, you know, a lot of other participants, healthy runners participating in Javelina, were whining and complaining and refreshing their weather app, in the lead up to like praying that the weather would change. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's the
You're
weather's going
wasting
to do what
energy.
it does. Well,
Yeah.
why are you giving energy to that? Why don't you just accept the forecast and prepare? So I think like that's what you're seeing there. Like I knew I had to be tough, but I knew that was a checked box. Like I had suffered so much, from the disease. I knew that the training and the ultra itself couldn't be any worse than that. But to really, give myself the best chance of succeeding, I had to lean into the wisdom piece and letting go of the things I couldn't control, and then taking advantage of the things I could.
And you actually do talk about that in the book, and like about trying to control the controllables, I guess. And you did have a whole bunch of strategies for keeping cool and things like that. But you did make, I guess, a couple of things that you identified as mistakes. I mean, I don't know, from an outsider looking in, I'm kind of like, you know, I think it's kind of normal to have an oversight here or there because we can't always all think of everything. But I don't know, maybe give us a couple of examples just in case anybody else is looking to run a really hot 100K out there, and wants to learn from your experience.
Yeah. Well, something that was like just an unexpected, aspect of the experience was I had fallen behind, as a runner. Like, super shoes were still like pretty new when I got sick and had to stop. And then
Hmm.
like technology and products and all this stuff had changed, and I
And
hadn't.
usually you know all about all those
I
things.
know. Yeah, usually
Yeah.
like I'm testing prototypes before they hit the market. And yeah, I remember like the first time I went to our local running specialty store here in Flagstaff to like, because I had gotten rid of all my running gear because I'm like, well, I'll never need this again.
Oh my goodness.
And so, yeah, like everything was, I had to like, I was almost like a beginner again. So, yeah, going into it, I'm like, oh, I'm super experienced. I can just like lean on that. And I was, but I'd also fallen behind and I just like forgotten things. So an example was, in the race, I was, and I knew the weather forecast, but I was dressed, in, a regular singlet, running singlet with a lot of exposed skin. And this is an open desert. So not only is it 99 degrees, but it's like there's no shade. It's just like
Hmm.
beating
Mm.
sun. You're just like an ant under a magnifying glass out there. And I looked around and everyone else is like covered up.
Yeah,
I'm
got
like, dang it.
thin
Like
sleeves and stuff.
at one time I knew you were supposed to, like if it's 75 degrees Fahrenheit, then you want like exposed skin so you can get,
Hmm.
evaporative cooling. But when the temperature just keeps going up, you go in the other direction and you start
Yeah.
covering up again. And I didn't do that. So things like that is where I was just like I knew better and I had just forgotten and I was kicking myself too late.
You
Yeah.
see, you seem to make a few errors that were maybe long COVID related as well. Um, a whole series of frustrations once you got started in the race. Um, the one that I found the funniest was you had your pants on inside out.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah. It's like a classic anxiety dream, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
At
Yeah,
least
it's
you had
funny
your
because
pants on, but
yeah, because I
Yes.
have my classic anxiety dream is I show up somewhere with no pants and like I don't know, this would never happen in my life, but for some reason in my dreams I show up at work for, for something like some visit and like there I have no pants on and I'm running walking around in my underwear asking everybody if they have an extra pair of pants and yeah, these and so, yeah, reading about your pants inside out is like, oh my goodness, it's like dreams becoming a reality.
I, th I think in the
Yeah.
book you were trying to put your bottles in your flexible bottles into your pants pockets and you couldn't get them in. You didn't realize why. And
Yeah.
then eventually you realized, well, that's because I've got my pants on inside out.
Yeah. And this is 5 minutes before the start of the race. So
You had a really good crew though. It sounded
yes.
like they, they seemed to know what they were doing and they like took really good care of you
Yeah.
in the pants experience and beyond that. They seem to be on point. I have a question about just writing in all of this. So for chronic disease in general, like one of the things that they suggest to do about symptoms to discover what your triggers are is journaling. But you're already a writer, you're kind of naturally a writer. And so I'm guessing you were doing some form of tracking your experience. Do you think that at all helped you, I don't know, identify symptoms or track triggers or discover anything about yourself or where you are in your disease or help you in any other way?
Yes. Yeah. There were two things that happened in terms of like tracking. So um before, right around the time I started my journey, a medical school student reached out to me. He had read a profile of me in the New York Times, and I actually like I said what I was going to do there. So I was kind of stuck at that point. Like
Yeah,
I told the writer for the New York
committed.
Times I was going to try to run an ultramarathon with long COVID, and
Now
then
you had to do it.
yes, but it actually was very beneficial because like a lot of people reached out to me who ended up being able to help me, because they'd seen that. And one of them was this medical school student who had a mentor who was like a medical researcher, and they asked if I would be interested in volunteering to be a case study. Like no like scientific ethics board would ever allow a researcher to design a study that recruited people with
Yes.
unresolved long COVID to run an
Yeah.
Yeah.
ultramarathon. But since I had already made that decision for myself, they said, "Hey, can we study you?" And they wanted to like make it as they didn't want it to be onerous for me, but they told me like they wanted me to track certain physiological measurements, so like lung function and like heart rate variability and that kind of thing. That 6 point PEM scale from 0 to 5. I
Hmm.
devised that on. They said you should devise a scale. We'll let you do it, but we want you to track that. And then, of course, I was tracking my training, and that added some like rigor to like cause and effect, that allowed me to just wrap my head around what I could and couldn't get away with and that sort of thing. And yes, this was a writing project as much as it was an athletic endeavor. So I started documenting. I'm not a journaler. If I'm writing to share, but
Hmm.
it sort of like functioned as a journal. So I could
Hmm.
I could just sort of like process what I was experiencing. And it's different. Like you don't really think things through until you try to put it in words on paper. So that was very helpful too, along the way.
So the thing with journaling, though, I feel like it's one of those things that you found it very helpful. The people that do it find it very helpful, but it's hard to get people to do it that are not natural journalers because the thing is that it's kind of labor intensive,
Mhm.
requires pen and paper and like you said, some rigor. So I don't know if you had to instruct someone that's not a journaler about tracking their symptoms to try and find some kind of cause and effect. I don't know, are there sort of I don't know, it's a couple things that you would say, maybe just do this every day, track these few things every day, or is it hard to simplify to that degree?
Yeah, I mean, now we're getting really into the psychology of habit formation. That's what it is. It's hard to start any habit or to break any existing habit. And some of the things that tend to work well are like starting small. So some people think, oh, I have to journal. That means I have to go from nothing to 1,000 words a day. It's like, no, you don't. You can just like commit to something, at least one
Hmm.
sentence like every day. And then another thing that can be very helpful is you commit to like starting with like a streak. So, all right, I'm gonna journal every day for at least 1 month. Um, and then and so you're not then it's not a forever thing, and it doesn't seem
Hmm.
as daunting. It's like I just have to do this every day for a month and then decide whether to keep it up or not. And of course, what the psychologists know is like by the time you've been doing it for a month, you've got some momentum behind the habit and you're probably seeing the benefits, and then it
Hmm.
doesn't take really willpower anymore to keep doing it. You want to keep doing it. So start small, commit to a streak. And also you can personalize it. Like, you could look at the things I tracked or the way I went around about journaling and decide, well, that worked for you, but I would actually like to take a different approach. Fine, give yourself permission to do it your way because it is for you.
Did it conclude anything? The study, did it conclude anything apart from the fact that you're bordering on insane?
Yeah. I mean, I actually kind of ruined the study because there's that 7 week period when I went off the cliff.
Yeah.
I call that the lost period in the book. So
Yes.
just to orient people, so I started training on January 1st. The race was on at the end of October. So it was like I had 10 months.
Hmm.
And so from I think it was like June 7th was like day one of the lost period. So for 7 weeks beginning so that's when I really when healthy runners who had signed up for Javelina were doing entering their peak training
Kind of
period
doubling down, yeah.
is when I and when I say, lost period, I not only did I not run for 7 weeks, I didn't move for 7 weeks. Like I was in a really
Hmm.
bad state. So it was like zero exercise for 7 weeks. Went back to square one. And at that point, I was in such a bad state that I stopped tracking everything. And I'm like, well, I'm probably not going to be able to do the race. There's probably not going to be a book. I don't care about the study
Hmm.
anymore. I was just like kind of like cocooning. I was in survival mode. And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I got back to tracking after that. But the doctors are like, unfortunately, we needed data during that time.
Yeah,
Uh,
we needed all the
Yeah.
really bad data.
yes.
Oh,
One of the small side effects of long COVID is that you screw up those kind of studies.
Yes.
mm,
But that's probably very minor on the list of side effects. But you can add that to your 35 if you want. You said that the medical people, could never recruit people to 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 have long COVID and send them off into the desert to run 100K, um, for some sort of very obvious and very good reasons. And that sort of brings me around to the inherent dangers of doing these things. Um, so you have to program yourself, I guess, to say, well, if I'm going to get to the start line and go, I'm going to have to suffer. And therein lies the problem with marathon runners and endurance runners, because you got to program yourself that when it gets difficult, i.e., when it gets extremely, extremely, extremely difficult, I'm not going to stop, because there's no point in starting almost, because I will have those periods and I have to work through them. But in your situation, not really trained, quite a significant sickness, um, putting yourself through a challenge that is ridiculously tough, uh, above your training level. And now you've mentally programmed yourself, probably. Maybe you could speak to it a little bit. but you mentally programmed yourself to just go despite whatever happens. Didn't people try to talk you out of doing this? Who people who loved you try to talk you out of it? And how did that go? And also, how prepared were you to suffer? I mean, it sounded in the book like you were prepared to die during the, no, to put too fine a word on it. Talk
Yeah.
to me about that.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of like how risky or how dangerous was this really? I didn't know. I didn't think I could like actually kill myself. Because it really is like, the nub of it is your nervous system overreacting, to
Hmm.
threats like exercise. So I thought, well, that'll just shut me down,
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
It's almost like a protective thing. But then when I mentioned I ran the Flagstaff Marathon as just kind of like a trial balloon 3 weeks before Javelina. And during that race, I suffered kind of like a medical event. Like I'm on the race course and, I'm underprepared and my body is compromised and it's hot and the air is thin. And I started to hyperventilate. Um, and my heart rate was pinned at 180 beats per minute, which is max for me. My entire left leg went numb, or like it just like I developed severe acute neuropathy from the foot all the way up into the butt. So I really kind of like, so that pins and needles kind of like
Hmm.
numb, and I was in a sorry state. And I had been running when this started, but then I slowed to a walk, and it didn't help. I'm still hyperventilating. I can't bring my breathing down. My heart rate isn't coming down. I feel hyperthermic. I can't feel my left leg, and
Wow.
and I was able to finish the race. And then afterwards, I'm like, what was that? And I asked Dr. Google, and found out that it was most likely what's known as autonomic hyperactivity, which is a form of shock, which can be fatal. I didn't really feel like it was going to be for me, but it was, I felt like I was dying, but it wasn't going to end in death. So that was helpful because, well, that was a marathon, and like if that happened at 85 degrees in a marathon, it sure as hell is going to happen at
Hmm.
99 degrees in 100K, and it
Hmm.
did. Um, so I just thought like, okay, well, I could just keel over at some point. Like I'm not going to die, but it's going to be ugly. And so, my crew was prepared for that. My pacer ran with a SATCOM device, so he would have like guaranteed, an easy way to call for help. These are things that you normally don't do before a race, but like I made sure I
Hmm.
knew where the nearest hospital was. I looked into like how I would get there, if I keeled over in a more remote part of the course. So like I just prepared for all of that. The suffering part again, like I wasn't worried about like just feeling bad. I was just wondering like what could actually stop me. And again, I didn't think it would be like actual death. And then I told my crew because um, like you have to be fair. Like they were there because they cared about me,
Hmm.
and so that gave me a responsibility to them. So I told them like, and we met for dinner before the race. I said, I am not going to stop for any reason. However, like you have the right to stop me. Like I'm putting that in your hands. Like you know how much this means to me. You know how badly I want to finish it, but if judging from your perspective as someone who cares about me thinks I need to stop, you can stop me, and sort of left it at that.
Wow.
Well,
Okay.
what about Javelina? Did Javelina know about you and have anything to say?
No, no, there was no
Okay.
special accommodations.
Okay,
Mm.
you just filled in. Do you have any
Showed
medical
up.
conditions?
Yeah.
Yes. One or
Yeah,
two.
I had my emergency contact. That's about it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. In terms of Javelina, so Javelina is a looped course. Do you think
Yes.
that was that was better for you because then, you kind of knew what to expect on the second and third loop, and you got to see all your people in between? Or do you think it was like a curse because, every time you come around, you basically have the option to quit?
Yeah. Well, javelina is considered like a relatively kind of beginner friendly because they do a 100K and a 100 miler. And because it's looped and it's not terribly technical in terms of the terrain, it has, a good amount of climbing, but
It's not hard
not
rock.
compared to some of the
Yeah.
other
Hmm.
races out there. And so I was familiar with the event because, I live, less than 3 hours drive away. The year before, I did it, my friend Jared did the 100 miler. And so I showed up to support him. And that's really what planted the seed in my head is, like anytime I went to a race, during my period of like not running, of course the FOMO was intense. Like I would,
Yeah.
watch other people
Mm.
competing and just want so badly to be out there. But in all of those past experiences, there was no real temptation because my thinking was I can't do that because I'm too sick to do that. But something about like being in that environment at that time, I don't really know, but I think that was like around the time at a gut level, I began to accept that I wasn't going to recover. And it was that acceptance that put my mind in a different perspective, like, well, who says I can't at least try? Who says I have to wait to be healthy to try this? So like, that experience planted the seed. And then I also thought, well, if I'm going to do this, like it would be this event. And part of it was that it did have a looped course. And of course I wanted it to be incredibly difficult, but like not gratuitously so. So I
Hmm.
thought like this could be an event where it would be more doable, where I could, have a crew that could see me more often and yeah, just it seemed like the ideal event to give it a try.
Okay, yeah, I kind of liked looped courses. There's 100K race, so I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever do 100K. Like, I'm pretty satisfied with going up to the marathon and that's it. But,
Uh-huh.
when I was younger, I think I was kind of voted on my cross country team as being the most likely to do an ultra marathon one day. So maybe the seed has been planted.
Hmm.
And there's this 100K race that Krista Duchesne, who's like a well-known marathoner in Canada, I mean, was around the years 2012 because that's when she was at her prime. And she did her first 100K at this race in Ontario, and it's five loops of 20K. And I thought that sounds great. And it's not particularly hilly. It's not particularly technical, which is also kind of like right up my alley. So I always thought like that's great because like five loops, it's wonderful. I could,
Hmm.
go with my husband and he would just be there and I could see him every loop and it'll be fun. But then I tell people and they're like, that sounds awful. You mean you
Yeah.
have the opportunity to quit every time you come around and like why would you want to do the same thing five times? And I'm like, I don't know. Same reason you
Yeah.
run track, I guess.
Yeah, if you want to start an argument in a group of runners, like put that in front of them. Okay, you have to run
Yeah.
100K. Do you want point to point or loops? And
Yeah.
you'll have like a war between two factions that like are, it's like it's a wedge issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's there are really two camps for that.
Mhm.
We see in as you get into the race, we see you go on the roller coaster of sort of performance and health during the race. Um, you go through several very big lows. Um, in fact, bouts of what you describe as autonomic shock. Um,
Mhm.
and so people find you basically almost crawling or walking for a while, and there's still more than half of the race to go. Um, and then later on, find you running faster than you've ever run. How did that feel? Sort of going through that ebb and flow and not knowing how it was going to turn out.
Yeah, you have to expect the unexpected in an ultra, even if you're healthy. And if you're not, it's that times 10. If you look at, the mindsets of champions, they're very even keeled emotionally,
Hmm.
and it really is just as important not to get too high when things are going well as it is to, not catastrophize when they're not going well and just be it's a great time to be stoic and
Yeah.
just even things out. And I had marginal success with that. I do have a tendency to like get cocky when things are going my way, and I think I slipped into that a little bit. Also, I mean, it's impossible to overstate just how much this meant to me and how like profoundly grateful I was. It felt like a miracle. It
Hmm.
was like pinch me, can this really be happening? Because I had given up on ever being able to put a number on my belly again and go out there and do the thing. And so that was almost like a high, just like this, it's almost like ecstasy of gratitude for just being there. And, it was like intoxicating, which did set me up a little bit when, I knew it was going to be hard. I knew I wanted it to be hard. And I knew that was coming, but it came sooner than I expected. So I did kind of get wrong-footed by it.
Hmm.
And then, once the seal was broken, it was like just being in a battle for the rest of it with ups and downs, and you're just so deep inside it, and it's just all coming at you so fast that you're just doing the best you can. But yeah, there were highs and lows all the way through.
I support I support a soccer team in the UK called Sunderland, and for the last 10 years they've been pretty useless. Um, but for my, I was born as a supporter of Sunderland, so I've got no choice. Um, and we have a saying among the supporters, and the saying is, "It's the hope that kills you."
Yeah.
Um, and it came very starkly to mind while I was reading the passages of you trying to get around this course and basically having, oh, here comes success. Oh no, here comes abysmal failure. Oh, hang on, I'm rallying. Oh no, I'm collapsing. I was thinking, oh God, it's the hope that kills you. But I guess that's not far from the sort of stoic approach, which is sort of putting your hope to one side,
Yes.
and just living in the moment and working your way through.
Yes.
I think Marcus Aurelius could have a lot to teach supporters of my soccer team.
uh, yeah, I'm a Red Sox fan, but it's the
It's the
same.
same. Yeah,
Yes.
it's the equivalent.
So we noticed a lot of poems in the book. They were all very well placed based on, what the theme was. Um, but do you have any plans to release a poetry book?
No, this was my sneaky way of like kind of doing that. I think there
Sliding
were like
some in.
eight or nine posts. But so I was 9 years old when I decided I wanted to be a writer. And what I wrote growing up was poetry. That was for, I was a huge fan of Silverstein and Dr. Seuss. Like they were my my early literary heroes. And so
Yeah.
I just started writing poems and did it throughout high school, throughout college. In fact, my first published book is a collection of poetry. When I was 23, I self-published a collection of my own poems. And then like 7 years passed before I pivoted to my first prose book for well, that was for triathletes. But I still write poetry. Like you can't make a living doing it, so it's just always something I've done kind of in the background for myself. And I go through phases too. And I mentioned I'm not really a journaler, but poetry is kind of my journaling. So when I go through like a difficult patch in life, I'll start, I'll have like thoughts. I'm like, oh, I should write a poem about this. And so when I developed long COVID, like the pandemic was traumatic for everyone. So it wasn't just long COVID for me. It was also the pandemic. And here in the States, we had like political turmoil. It was just like a lot of things were, no one was happy in 2020.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And so for me, yeah, and also during that period when I had to stop working, um, I still can't shut off my creative mind. And so I would just be like lying on a sofa, at noon on a Wednesday, like bored out of my mind, not feeling good. And I would just like write poems in my head. I couldn't even really sit at a desk and type. So I would just like write poems in my mind. And some of those are what ended up in the book. And they really they helped. They didn't really fix the problem, but they did give me a way of, coping emotionally with what I was going through.
That sounds tough. It sounds like, your healthy mind was trapped inside your sick body.
Very much. Yes, that's exactly what it felt like.
We talked about the fact that just entering the race um, is positive in itself, and you have something to look forward to. And you talked about the joy of the anticipation. So what happened after the race? How did you feel? Did you have like a big, big, big post-race blues, which, we marathon runners all kind of get a little bit? Did you
Hmm.
have like a massive reaction? And how did you deal with that? What have you sort of concluded to do afterwards?
Yeah. So my friend Jake, who's a character in the book, and he's a psychologist. um, when I sort of like I announced what I had gone and done in an email I sent to my inner circle, so my closest friends and my family. I said, "Hey, I've I've signed up for an ultramarathon. I would love to have your support." And Jake, I remember him saying, and this is before I had even done a single run. He said, like, you won't just stop at one race. Like, I know you. You won't be able to stop at one race. And I
Hmm.
was very dismissive of that. I said, like I don't even really expect to make it to this race. How am I possibly going to do? I mean, I knew what he was getting at because yes, I mean
Hmm.
that was like the athlete map. A lot of us, it's a kind of addiction, you know. Um, a success just makes you want more success as a runner. So for me, like I wasn't looking past it. It was like, I'm sick. I'm not getting better. I'm not doing this because I'm getting better. I'm doing it because I need closure. And closure is a one-off.
Yeah.
So I truly was not looking past it. However, I did all in all, despite like the setbacks and how hard the day itself was, I made a lot overall. Those 10 months went a lot better than even my rosiest, fantasies.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, but also at the same time, I truly hadn't looked past it. So I felt a little bit unmoored after the experience, and it was like sort of like a now what type of thing.
Yeah.
But I did end up deciding I do want to try to build on this, and I want
Yeah.
to keep running and maybe set other goals and just see how far I can get. And so that's what I decided to do.
The thing that
All
I was
right.
thinking of when I was reading the book was, um, I don't know if any of you are fans of the TV series, ancient TV series Lost, but where all the characters at the end, the kind of series is finished and they've all gotten away, and then they all conclude, "Oh no, there's only one thing we have to do. We'll have to go back to the island." And I thought, this is kind of Matt's
Yes.
version of Lost.
Yeah.
Like he's going to do Javelina, but then he's got to go back to the island for whatever reason. But you didn't get to go back to Javelina necessarily because you broke your leg
Yes.
or you did something. Um, and at the end of the book, it's sort of we see you sidelined. Um, I think you did that at the Flagstaff Marathon, doing the prep for another Javelina.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. What I ultimately decided to do was step up to 100 miles because
oh
Javelina does
no.
offer that
Wow.
option.
Okay.
Um, yeah. And yeah, so this would have been last year, 2025. And yeah, it's funny because like I knew that was going to be sort of like the epilogue of the story, but it's a high
Yeah.
wire act because,
Yeah.
I just had to wait until that day came around. And if it went well, it would be a happy epilogue. If it didn't go well, it would
Yeah.
be kind of a downbeat epilogue. Um, but like I did make a lot of progress last year. So like now so I would have been 53, turning 54 in May. Um, and and I, I just trained my butt off and my body, I had more, like I wasn't cured. I still had setbacks, I still had bad days, but over the course of that year, I made incredible progress and and got to the point where I felt like, I'm as fit now as I would be if I had never gotten sick. I was able to, um,
Okay.
you
Get to
know,
that level.
yeah, and in the Flagstaff Marathon, I was crushing it. I was I was in third place, uh,
Wow.
like drawing a bead on the guy in second place. Two
Wow.
miles to go. Left foot comes down, and I just feel a crack in my left
Oh my goodness.
lower leg. Being insane, I finished the race. Did not catch the second place guy. And then just yeah, so I ended up being on a pair of crutches and a boot so yeah, that is kind of like the closing scene. Also, not to give too much away, but I got some bad news like health wise, like right
Yeah.
around that same time. I have a heart issue that is like somewhat overlapping with long COVID that is actually kind of more of an issue for me now
Yeah.
from an athletic perspective. But so like I didn't, I'm stoic to the end. So I don't know how readers are gonna, they want to see me win the 100 miler, right? They want the Disney version, and you don't get that.
Yeah.
But still, for me, like it's part of like what I see as the lesson of the story. It's like, folks, it doesn't really matter how it ends. Like
Yeah.
it's the journey that you embark on
Yeah.
when you just go for it.
Hmm.
When you just you challenge your impossibles. For me, it's like it's impossible for me to run another race with long COVID. And then, I poked at that and realized like bullshit. So for me, no regrets. You always want a happy ending, but truly, this is not just something I tell myself. I truly believe that like,
Hmm.
like the experiences I had along the way are the things I'm going to be treasuring going forward.
I think that's a great lesson for just everybody that races in general because it doesn't matter what the distance is, but I think that it's always we sign up for races as if that's you know, that's the big day where all the magic happens, but actually the magic's happening on the way there just because, now we have hope for the future in our life and we have something to talk to people about and we have plans to plan for. And I think like sometimes those are the things that make life fun, at least daily, whereas the race is just one day. So it
Yes.
was great that you kind of left that message out there in the end, I find. So I think that's it's a good takeaway from the book. We should probably wrap up. So for people that are listening that want to read the book for themselves, what's the best place for them to get it?
Yeah, so the fun of this one is that I'm not only the author, I'm also the publisher of this book. So
Yay.
I'm a partner in a small publishing company called 80/20 Publishing, sister company of 80/20 Endurance. And I mean, we're small. Like we do like 4 books a year, and they're all about endurance sports. But we are partnered with Simon and Schuster, one of the big five Goliaths in book publishing. So they are our distributor, And so that gives us,
Big reach.
worldwide reach. So a good place to start would be the publishing website. It's 8020books.com, 8020books.com. And you can learn more about the book there, read excerpts, and there are links to purchase. There will be an audio book that is published. So it'd be print, digital, and audio all officially coming out in September.
Yeah, we didn't mention, but the book actually, while we're talking here, the book is actually not out yet.
Yep,
Uh,
correct.
it's soon to be. By the time people are listening to this, most people, it'll be just about out, I think.
Yes, only my dearest friends have been able to read it
There
already.
you go. Thank you for that.
Amazing. All
Um,
right. And yeah, I don't know,
if people want to
I
follow
think,
you, they can follow you at 8020 or is this
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so yeah, my personal website is
okay.
mattfitzgerald.org. Yeah.
perfect. The 80/20 publishing, we usually tag you guys on Instagram, so they can follow what 80/20 publishing is
Yeah,
releasing, which is always
yeah.
fun. And it's probably way too early to ask this, but what's your next project, whether that be a writing project or a running project or a personal life project, because we know you have one. But you can
You have
say if
several, in
you,
fact.
yeah, you probably have several, but you can say if you
What can you tell
prefer
us about?
not to say.
No, I'll give you one of each. So, uh, I haven't slowed down with the writing. So I have another book coming out next spring. It's called Faster Masters. And so it's a book
Oh,
that looks like there's kind of like an exciting performance revolution that's happening, not just in running, but in all endurance sports with like 50 plus, like records
Yeah.
yeah.
being broken and sort of like the gap between the top older athletes and the young elites is kind of compressing, similar to like the gap
Hmm.
between men and women after Title IX.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so the book it's for any older endurance athlete who is performance oriented, but the hook is like what is going on that is allowing like all these records to be broken and sort of like redefining what's possible for older
Hmm.
athletes. So Faster Masters
Yeah.
will be out next spring. And then on the athletic side, when I was like recovering from my stress fracture, I started doing some indoor rowing and got a little bit. I mean, it's a pretty boring
Okay.
form of exercise, but
Yeah.
like me, I can't just do anything casually.
Hmm.
So, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm getting better at this rowing thing. So I discovered that they have like indoor rowing competitions, including like national championships, like
Wow.
age divisions, and so
All
there's one
right.
coming up here in the States next February. So I'm going to take a shot at winning the men's 55 to 59 lightweight division. And only two people showed up last year. So if the same thing happens again, I'm going to
You're
podium.
on the podium for
Yeah.
sure.
Guaranteed silver.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I'm
Yeah, I
ahead.
have
That's
to
pretty
say
cool.
it's so I think the only time that I've enjoyed other sports is when I've been injured, so and I couldn't run. So I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't know if I should say, well, I hope you can't run until February because then you're going to be very motivated to do well in this
Right.
rowing competition. But maybe yeah, maybe maybe you wouldn't mind mixing in some running in there as well. So
Yes. Yep.
yeah.
It's a lark, something to put me in
Yeah.
that anticipation
Good
state that I
stuff.
so
Good
love.
All
to hear.
right. Yeah. Good strategy.
Yeah. Okay. You want to do our summary thoughts?
Yeah. Do you want to?
I'll have first go if you like. Yeah, mostly I've talked about all the stuff I wanted to talk about, but basically
Yeah.
just this book, Dying to Run by Matt Fitzgerald. It's a great book. It's a fast read. I just found I just devoured it basically. Some books I find picking them up and working my way through, and it seems like the podcast has become less of a passion project and more of a work project, but absolutely not the case with this book. It was just, oh, I've got a minute. Let's pick the book up again. Oh, I'm making a cup of coffee. Pick the book up again, and just working it through quickly from that point of view. There's plenty of action, but there's also plenty of advice and philosophy. So that's a brilliant mixture from my perspective. I think, you may or may not be one of the most physically endowed super athletes, Matt, although you're darn fast. But I think mentally, you're probably one of the most. You could probably never measure it by an objective standard, but I think your situation has enabled you to get into a mental toughness scenario. So just listening to your philosophy and your approach and your thoughts is reinforcing for all runners. And I would advise people when they get the book and read the story to think about the background, about how you're approaching things. The cover is a very blurry image of what might be Matt running. It looks like it might be you. It's hard
Yep.
to tell because it's sort of blurry, but I think it represents well the idea of sort of long COVID fuzziness and confusion. I don't know if that was what you were reaching for, Matt, with respect to the cover, but I think it kind of portrays itself well. There's movement, there's action, but there's also, I'm not sure what I can see, and there's fuzziness. So it's kind of cool from that point of view. It embodies the story and the condition that you have at the same time. During the book, there was quite a bit of talk about people, a guy called Darnie, taking video of you. So I thought, well, there must be a video. So I started looking for a video. What I did find was a video trailer for the book, which is actually worth a look. It gives you a flavor of sort of what's in store in the book. So if you want to get if you're a visual experienced person, you can go and look for a video trailer. I don't know if there's any more video coming out from that.
A little bit. Yep.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So
Amazing.
We'll wait with anticipation for that.
All
Basically,
right.
it's another Fitzgerald goodie, and this time a very personal one, I think. And thanks for that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I made you go first because I didn't have much to add after that. In some ways, this book, I guess it's a classic Matt Fitzgerald book because it has a main story and it integrates a whole bunch of side stories that are all meant to either inspire or educate. But in other ways, it's very different because this one is so personal. Um, and although I think there have been a few books that have had some personal stories, they're usually running related, whereas in this book, we hear a lot more about Matt's wife, Nataki, and some of the longtime friends that he has and friends he's met along the way. So all that was kind of nice to read about. For me personally, I guess all the philosophy of life, it's I don't know. I think for me in my life, it was good timing. I got a lot out of that because I guess, I've been trying to transition careers, which in itself, it's an exciting idea because something I thought about for a long time. At the same time, it's very disorienting and, plays with your confidence and I guess reading Matt's story, it just kind of reinforces that you take one day at a time, one step at a time, and you don't know the outcome. You just kind of have to believe that what you're doing right now is worthwhile. And so all of that philosophy stuff is kind of well timed for me to be reading this book. So
Nice.
yeah. So thanks for that, Matt. As usual, we enjoy all your books, but yeah, this one in particular, I guess it's the timing was right, and the content is always good, but the timing was pretty good for me for this one.
Right on.
Hopefully, it'll be a big success, but not too successful because then you'll be going on these highfalutin podcasts instead of coming on running book reviews.
That will never change.
You fell into my trap. I was setting you up to say that in public.
I'm always afraid of the opposite. I'll wear out my welcome and get a hard
That
no.
also will never change.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Let me do the
Um,
outro.
all right.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. A big thank you to the publisher, 8020 Books, for providing review copies of the book. Early release copies, no doubt, no less. A big thank you to Matt for spending time with us today, sharing his wisdom. If you'd like to leave us feedback of how we could improve the podcast, or you'd like to suggest a book for further review in a future episode, you can leave us comments on social media. We are running book reviews on Facebook and Instagram. Please also follow us on social media, find out about new episodes when they're released. You can just subscribe to our podcast on your favorite streaming platform. If you've been listening to us for a while and you would like to help us out, if you're enjoying the podcast, spread the word. Send this episode now to one of your friends and say, hey, listen to this. It's very cool. A lot of learning. Or you can just leave us reviews. I can't remember the last time we had an Apple podcast review. Does anybody do that anymore? You could be that person. You can also rate us on Spotify out of 5 stars. We're also on Buy Me a Coffee. You can go to buymeacoffee.com, look for a creator called Running Book Reviews, and you can see little snippets and outtakes and bits and bobs there. You may get prompted to buy us a coffee, but there is no obligation. Access to all the stuff there is free. That's all for today from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.